Stephanie, you're over there. I didn't see
I'm
you.
here.
Go on. Everyone rise for the pledge. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all for being here this evening. This is the Monday, April 4th, 2022, New Britain Township Board of Supervisors work session. At this time, I have two comments as chair. Item number one is that the board will be meeting in executive session after this meeting to discuss litigation and any other, just litigation?
Real estate.
Okay, and acquisition. The second item that I have a comment on is that we will be amending our agenda. We will be moving item 6A and discussing it after item 5A. Both of these items are being presented by the same professional crew, so we're going to do that as a convenience. So after that, I have no further comment. And at this time, we will now move to our presentation items. These are informational only. Any action we will take will be taken at our next business meeting. Open space grant, Mr. Jones.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'm here to give a very short presentation and answer any questions that you might have about the proposal that I think you've already had access to. So last year, about this time, I came in front of the board with Rebecca Hayden proposing to apply for a grant and asking for your approval for this pilot project, which you granted. And we subsequently won that grant, and that project will be executed actually starting in a few weeks. We'll be working on that project. So we have the opportunity to apply again, essentially to the same granting body. The same amount of dollars are available, and essentially we're going to propose the same project just in a different basin. So I'm happy to go through kind of the details of the project, but it might be better just to see if anybody has any questions. I think it's pretty straightforward.
I mean, I'm excited to see how the project goes in a couple of weeks. You know, I know that you put a lot of work along with Miss Hayden, Miss or Mrs. Miss Hayden, to get the grant, and you know, we're looking forward to how that turns out. So I mean, this sounds like a very similar project that should benefit the township in the long run. So I don't have any questions. Does anyone else?
Just want to thank you for all your hard work and time and support you.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. So essentially, I'm just asking for permission to apply. The deadline is a little bit earlier this year. We have essentially till the 26th, I think, of April, when we need to make application for the grant. And the only thing I'll need from the township is a letter of authorization, like we did last year.
So-
access to that land.
Gotcha. So then on our business meeting, we'll be presented then with a motion or an order. No, I mean, what are we?
Just a motion.
You adopt a motion authorizing the support letter and the authorization based on what was just presented.
Right, and the township staff to provide any support necessary.
Do we have time? Do you have time for another, do you have time for a 2-week delay for that permission or?
Yes, yeah,
Oh.
yeah. We're going to move forward, assuming that we're going to have permission.
Gotcha.
Yes.
So we already had a meeting today to talk about the budget.
Okay,
Okay.
very good.
That's all I have.
Does anyone
Thank
have any
you.
other questions? Staff, any comments?
Could I add a couple things?
Yes.
Just wanted to say that it's been a pleasure working with Mr. Jones for this, the first grant. He made it easy. It's really good to have that level of support on the outside, from the residents. And he just thank you for your professionalism. I really appreciate it. Looking forward to seeing Marshall Circle. The idea that we talked about last year was it would be a really good pilot study. It's not currently in the township's MS4 plan. However, this one is, the Circle Drive is in our MS4 plan. So I'm curious to see how the Marshall Circle one, how successful that one is. And I'm really looking forward to applying it to Circle.
We will have signage as a part of the project for Marshall Circle. I don't think makes much sense at Circle Drive since it's kind of secluded, it's rather secluded, but yeah, we're looking forward to it too.
Thank you.
And I think, yeah, Marshall Circle's on the 23rd on Saturday, the 23rd. So if anybody would like to come by and see them in action.
It would be great if, I don't know if anybody's available to come by and just say a few words to the volunteers on that Saturday morning. But it's not mandatory.
I have to look at the hockey and soccer schedule.
What time are you starting?
We're going to be starting at 8, but it could be, any time in the AM would be fine.
The project should take at least a few hours.
It'll take the better part of Saturday.
I will definitely try to be there.
Okay, great.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
23rd.
23rd.
All right, next item on the agenda is subdivision land development projects. Again, this is informational only. Any action we may take would be at the next business meeting, which will be on April 18th. Yes, the holiday isn't affecting that one. So at this time, if 180 New Britain Boulevard would please step up and introduce yourselves. I see Craig's already having a conversation.
Just handing out propaganda, but that's
Oh,
all right.
boy.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Kristen Pianzio. I'm with Hamburg, Rubin, Mullen, Maxwell, and Lupin. I'm here
That's a
with,
mouthful.
I know, thank God they don't answer the phones. I'm here tonight to talk to you about 180 New Britain Boulevard. I have Craig Malagrano, who's sitting there in the chair. He is the owner of the property. He's also the I have Kim Fashnot with me from Ritu Engineering. Just 2 more things to hand out and then we have this.
We have that.
You do that, right? Okay, so 180 New Britain Boulevard, instead of being vacant, my client purchased property and the building. We had a number of staff meetings before we went to the zoning hearing board. We went to the zoning hearing board because this was developed back in the 90s when parking requirements were a lot lower. There's only 84 spaces on this parcel now. The building's 101,700 square feet. And we wanted to add parking in order to provide more than is there today. My client owns what used to be the Harriet Carter Building, if you're familiar with that, in Montgomery on Stump Road. I've handed you his brochure. Craig can tell you he makes what's called Durapods. They are prefab bathrooms. Think hospitals, think colleges. As these buildings are built, all the pipes are in place and this unit is just inserted. At Harriet Carter, they completely rehabbed that building. He occupies half, he renovated the other half for a tenant. And it is there that we do the cutting and the measuring. Pretty much the pieces are made for the Durapods, and what we are doing here at 101 or 180 New Britain is the assembly. So we went to the zoning hearing board for the flex use, 80% is assembly, 20% office, and went in for the additional parking. The property has its constraints. It has woodlands, it has steep slopes, it has a storm basin that's existing. It has the Texas pipeline easement across it. We have both underground stormwater and above ground stormwater proposed. We're staying off the pipeline. We're adding 53 parking spaces. We've increased the turning radius for the trucks to get into the side. The turning radiuses work for our trucks, for the trash trucks. The pods and everything is done inside the building. They load and unload inside the building. We had a traffic impact study submitted. We got comments from Gilmore. We revised the study. The study shows that all the intersections around here work. We have capacity for water, capacity for sewer. We have our E&S approval in hand. So the only thing that we are here to talk about are the waivers. There's 3 of them. We went to the planning commission. They recommended unanimously that we get an approval with the waivers. The waivers are 3. First has to do with engineering datum, which Craig and Kim understand. I don't. Some measuring that Craig's office has approved. I don't think he has a problem with how the issue behind item 1 in the waiver letter is resolved. Right, Craig? Okay. The second one has to do with the overlay, the milling and overlay of the entire street in front of the building. As you know, this is an existing building, industrial park. All we're doing is reusing a building. We wouldn't be here but for the additional parking. So we're not doing anything heavy construction. We're not having heavy vehicles, cranes and whatnot to do anything because there is no construction on the building. So we ask for a waiver that this entire milling and overlaying is just not necessary for our little parking expansion. The third one has to do with this back corner, the turning radius. Well, we've asked for a waiver of roadway improvements, sidewalk widening, curb. Again, it's existing. Sidewalk does exist up to this part of our driveway. The rest of it all flows through the business park down to County Line Road. We did propose a crosswalk, which is shown on our plans because there is sidewalk across the street and then it traverses down through the business park. So we think we've done our share. We have to redo the handicap ramp here because it's really busted up. And Kim's office has talked with Gilmore and they're okay with us doing that. So we've asked for a waiver for the improvements. The comment in the Gilmore letter in response to that had to do with the turning radius here where Truey Town meets Schoolhouse. Apparently the buses have a hard time making that turn. We don't have school buses, so we don't think we're going to exacerbate any issue that they're having with that turning radius. The plan that I handed you is from 1993 when this was originally developed, and the choice at the time was to do a significant stormwater improvements at this corner. There's a swale, there's an end wall. All of that would have to be ripped out in order to do any improvements to the radius, which would be counterproductive to what has been installed in furtherance of the improvements of the business park. So the waiver is on the list. I understand that you have a resolution about making a fee donation or a donation for half the cost of a waiver. I've had communications with Craig and I hope to have them further with Jeff about how such a thing isn't warranted in this instance. Otherwise, every time someone came in for a land development to make any modification, a municipality would just keep double dipping on that waiver. even though there was a decision made years ago to do those improvements. So that's all I have to say about our application. I know that Jeff and I will have conversation between now and your next meeting regarding a written resolution. We are here to answer questions and to discuss those items if you'd like to.
Craig, did you have a letter? Because I haven't seen anything.
Our letter was February 23rd, 2022.
It's on this.
I'll have to, I may not remember.
It's not a long one, so maybe you missed it. I'll just jump in. The planning commission did meet on March 8th. They recommended preliminary final. It's a minor land development, so it's actually final. I think my review letter you just mentioned says preliminary, but it does reference minor land development. So this will be for final approval. They did support the 3 waivers that were mentioned, and there were no other conditions. I did talk to Kristen and said the fee in lieu of, you have a resolution. That's something we could work out for your next meeting as far as the fee. I do understand there's improvements made, concessions made way back when that building was built. So that was brought to our attention. Obviously still need to meet current ordinances and mill and overlay is one of the requirements. So I did get some feedback that there might be some areas that need repair, but I was not advised it was right in front of your building or not. I would recommend one condition that if you damage the road at all through construction, something new, that would be repaired. That'd be part of condition of that waiver, mill and overlay.
Sure.
We've done that before. So I think that's fair that any damage during construction, that would be repaired to satisfaction of the township engineer. I have no other comments on this. This is a relatively small project, a vacant building that you'd like to see filled up, and it's ready for any discussion. If there isn't a lot, they will seek approval at your next meeting.
Just talking about that corner of Truitt Town and Schoolhouse, because there are buses that are in that development, there's a school bus depot in there. I know that that has a steep drop off on one of those corners. And I'm not asking you to do it. I'm saying, where would that get fixed if we already have people who are using that corner and it's.
So planning commission brought that up. You still had that vacant piece across the street.
Yeah.
And that was the consensus to support the waiver on this, especially because since it's a vacant building and,
Yeah.
trying to fill, is when that's developed, that intersection be relooked at and the
Goes
whole
with that one.
intersection. And I do
Okay.
agree with it from a planning perspective. So any fee in lieu of the money could be directed towards that intersection. And if you have any other jobs in the area, that intersection be redone
Okay.
as part of that overall fix, but not piecemeal it with the individual land development coming through.
Okay.
So.
Now, do I understand correctly that you've bought the property that's behind it as well?
Yes,
Any plans for that?
yes. Just not now.
Just not now. Okay.
There's some urgency in getting underway here. In fact, when we went to the zoning hearing board, they agreed to a condition I offered that we occupy the building while we're going through this process, knowing that this approval process takes time, and they limited us to 65 employees at any given time using the existing 87 spaces. So they're in need for space, and so that's backburnered for now, but
Okay.
we'll be back, I'm sure.
And maybe we can talk about that intersection at that time.
Perhaps.
Well, now, I'm going home a lot because, we have been gradually making our way up Schoolhouse with the tree business, and then with the Blue Bot, who's in?
Right beside it.
Yeah.
Janie.
Where we had a vision of the road eventually being improved on both sides as much as possible as you get to the intersection of Schoolhouse and Truitt Town. So I'm going to let you know that I am hesitant to not to sit here and say that I wouldn't like to see something more done for the help of the intersection, because this is it's part of our land development. So if you are going to be doing something, you know, like a unification of lot, because you're getting rid of the residential, you know, I may be lenient about it now, but I'm going to push harder down the road. Because, you know, regardless of whether or not it was done by another board 30 years ago, that's
Right.
not the board that's sitting here now. And this is our opportunity to correct a bad intersection. So I am hesitant, but I also do not desire to necessarily hold you up this evening. So thoughts?
I would concur to you. I mean, I want to see something done with that intersection, whether it's today or next year or 2 or 3 years from now, it's something that has to be done at that intersection. So,
And I'm not necessarily talking about pushing it off to the property across the street either, because the utility poles are all over there, and that's going to be a deal breaker for a lot of future development. So we do have to look at where we can get the improvements, when we can get them, and where we can get them. So
now, Craig, you said that you would be taking into account the 50% that we normally ask would include the curbs and sidewalks and all that as part of that intersection area?
I mentioned to her that that resolution requires an engineer's estimate. Usually from their professional, we review it and then it's your resolution is 50% of that.
But that would include this area that we're talking about, the intersection.
Town's frontage and Schoolhouse's frontage. There, the property borders the road.
Well, no, there's just,
Well,
I'm
there's-
hesitating because there's discrepancy that I have not spent the time to look at. They're arguing that where their property line stops.
So there's a couple of things going on.
Right.
One,
I'm sorry.
your background there. So our title shows that we own to the center line.
Right.
One of the things I want to discuss with your solicitor is instead of the municipality compensating the owner for that right of way, we would offer that right of way at no cost to the municipality. That's number one, because without it, the improvements can't be done. Number two, this vegetation is mature, very mature. I'm sure you've all driven this a million times. This is how I go home.
On my way here.
Right, I mean, I drive this every day and now I stare at it and look at the improvements. To do anything here and here would just rip all of that out. And I don't think there's a problem here. The fact that buses have now come into play 30 years after a decision was made to do extensive stormwater work at the corner should not be burdened by one property owner that's just adding parking. I mean, this is an existing development and the resolution doesn't give municipalities, oh, let's add up everything we could get under these waivers and then whack them for 50%. The law doesn't work that way when it comes to waivers. I mean, that's why I pointed out the decision was made in '93 to put extensive stormwater work there. You know, there's an end wall there, there's drainage swales, it's a significant grade drop. If you were to do those improvements, all of that would have to be ripped out. So every time someone comes in, if we come in to add a little parking or a little something, you don't get to hit somebody up for the same waivers over and over and to write a municipality check. That's not how the MPC works.
It's not what I'm saying. And also, we don't have to grant the waiver. So please don't put that out there. So
I have to represent my client.
I know you
who happens
do.
to be sitting here.
I know you are, and I know you
And
do.
I can discuss it with your solicitor.
I
but
think
I
what
don't know
Greg
what you
means
could
is,
do at this corner that
might
wouldn't
be a-
end up.
might be a
designing
better
all
way
of
of
that.
phrasing it.
I'm sorry.
Might be a better way of phrasing what you're trying to say.
I'm saying that waivers are supposed to be granted when they're reasonable and when they don't effectuate anything further that you would get for widening here and taking the trees out. I didn't want you to think that that was anything that we had in mind, especially since there's sidewalk across the street. We envision, you know, some connection maybe if there's any further development on this side. And that's why we put the connection here, because all the sidewalk goes this way down to County Line Road. All the truck traffic goes this way. So it's safer to have the sidewalk in this direction in the business park. So that's why we've designed it the way we have.
Is there any traffic going out onto True Wigton?
No.
No,
this
it's all
is-
goes
this
into
is-
the,
Yeah.
It's
park.
all going to be going, in fact, there is a no truck right-hand turn lane or right turn right here. So it's intended that all traffic is going to go out to County Line Road.
Where the
It
light
could be
is.
an employee
Yeah.
maybe that would go that way, but all the
Yeah.
all the truck
And I
traffic.
do want to note on Schoolhouse Road, there is also signage that says no truck traffic as well. So there's no anticipation that it will ever go on unless there's pop signs and then we can't help that. But
Right, that's how we designed the building next door. That's why that entrance on the schools or exit on the schoolhouse is designed the way it is. No trucks.
right, so that's, I
Emergency.
just wanted to make that clear too, that it's not anticipated that our truck traffic is going to go there. It's all going to be left turn out and then down to County Line Road.
And that's the benefit of you having installed that light down at County Line so that the trucks are enticed to go in that direction.
So there is no curbing or sidewalk on New Britain Boulevard in front of your building?
There is curbing
There's
and
a curb.
sidewalk along here.
Okay,
It's just-
And then it ends, you can kind of, I can't see it from there,
Well-
sorry, but it ends right here at the end of the radius.
on New Britain Boulevard?
Yeah,
Yes.
Okay,
There's
our
curbing
letter
also.
references Schoolhouse Road, Town Road. So from that intersection up and around, which was never contemplated as part of the original development, we still have it in there. The answer to Mr. Jones' question, yes, it's technically a waiver. They're asking for it. That's something I would have to be worked out as far as the fee. That will be, I think they are looking at, all right, this is gonna be a very high fee, but yes, they have frontage on Town and Schoolhouse, but New Britain Boulevard is already approved.
Right, and then one thing to keep in mind is there is a pretty steep slope, especially in this corner here, it's very unsafe. So if we were talking about adding improvements, we would have to really consider where they would be as far as sidewalk. It would most likely be on the upper slope of the, in towards our property, just for safety reasons. And then that's going to have to be removal of this mature stand of trees here and then along here. So I think that's where she was trying to get at, is there's just safety concerns. You can't with this intersection, which you guys are all very familiar with.
Does the board have any other questions?
I do.
Who?
I don't.
Oh, you don't?
I do not.
Staff, Joe? Staff, do you have any comments or questions?
I guess I was still quiet tonight because planning commission didn't feel a need to discuss any of this, and so my head's already spinning that. This is where we should have talked about at planning commission, but they felt that the waivers and everything should be just put at that intersection. So usually I have a lot more to say. I know you guys know that, but really I knew the costs were high. I also knew the trees would have to come down. I knew there's a lot of issues with that are going to get very costly. I think they already made their pitch about the fee in lieu of, but I know planning commission was focused more on the intersection, not putting all the burden on that next property, but some of the money wants to, and also, the township look at that to help alleviate that problem as well. It's just not put on developer, but our office and the township staff working on trying to fix that intersection. So that's been looked at for a long time.
Mhm.
I was not trying to put that burden all on them, although they are the corner lot. Technically, they do have to improve the entire frontage of the property.
Because there's sidewalk on the other side of the street by that development, correct?
Yeah.
But it stops a
It
little bit
stops
That's
before.
here.
That's the end of the property.
Yeah.
Well, because they're no, there's the one.
There's a
It's
house or
standalone,
two.
and then you have a little
all over
wire
there.
fence, so you get the
It's
corner.
not part
Yeah.
of the development.
Yeah, we've all driven it, so we're just trying to imagine it from here. Yeah.
Matt, do you have anything to add? All right, at this time, is there any public comment? I don't think we have any public. I think everyone in the room is an engineer, lawyer, or applicant. Is there any public comment online?
No one had their hand up.
Okay, very good. So then, how do we proceed? Board? We authorize, I mean, we basically have to now, tell everyone, go ahead and prepare for the next meeting.
I thought we were just hearing presentations tonight.
Well, so are we, but I guess the question, this is one of the things about, now we have to decide, are we taking action at the next meeting or
Well,
not?
it's not technically action, but you can provide guidance to the staff to prepare a resolution and to get it to a point where the board could take action in 2 weeks.
I think our engineer and solicitor has heard our concerns.
We have heard what your concerns are. We understand the issues, and we'll continue our dialogue and hopefully come back with something the board can live with.
Okay. Is the board happy?
Mhm.
All right, very good. Thank you
Great,
very much.
thank you.
Yep. So I'm not quite sure who's staying, but next on the agenda is 141 Independence Lane.
We're just gonna switch the plan.
Okay, very good.
Same group.
While they're switching the plan, I'll give you my script here.
Yes.
The applicant is proposing to construct a 92,825 square foot warehouse. Use K3 is permitted in the IO district. The construction includes parking and loading areas, underground storage, it's going to have public water and public sewer. And they have filed an application with your zoning hearing board seeking relief. The relief is they're proposing a building of 42 feet high where the ordinance requires no more than 35 feet. They also want to disturb steep slopes and various percentages you'll note in Ryan's email, which are 40% of those between 8 and 15%, 30% from 15 to 25, and 15% of those over 25%, 100% of that. They also want to have less than one space per 500 square feet of parking spaces, requires 186. They're proposing 53. And they want to allow the paved areas to be located less than 20 feet from the structural walls of the building that proposed 9.3 feet. We've had a discussion today at the staff conference. I think at this point, pending presentation by council, our position is we should be opposing the application for safety issues. And I don't think Gilmore's had the opportunity to actually thoroughly review the modification to the plan that may be before the zoning hearing board. But that's our position. And I think that Ms. Pianzio is going to provide some comments to you in the hopes that you might see it differently.
And your recommendation comes with review of the fire marshal letter.
We're concerned about the circulation around the building and the other things the fire marshal has identified.
And has the applicant received a copy of the fire marshal's
I don't,
letter?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Evening, it's us again.
Hello.
We understand, and we just found out today that you were reviewing this, but we think we can handle it because we're all here. If this is the last parcel in the industrial park, it's been vacant for a long time. I think the staff and we can work through a lot of the mounds of dirt that are on the property were moved there as the whole park got developed, so they're probably man-made steep slopes, and therefore 3 of the variances that we've asked for can probably go away in discussions with staff. I think the main issue is the circulation around the building, and that the fire marshal wants circulation around the building. I know that Kim has spoken to him about how to accomplish that, and we think that we can. She did have communications with him about a paver product that would allow circulation to get around. We're willing to make the man happy. You know, whatever it takes to get around the building is really what we're here to say. We are right at the pinch point for impervious coverage, so we didn't want to do a full macadam. We're allowed like 65%, we're like 64.9. But Kim's had conversations with him about a product. He said, great, get me the specs, I'll review it. But the bottom line is we know that we have to make him happy, if not in front of, you know, an issue in front of the zoning hearing board, we have to go through land development and have his review appear before the planning commission and back before this board, knowing that he's a key player to any development. So that's our commitment. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, no, so just to clarify, I did talk to the fire marshal and we were looking at using a grass paver for the 52 bar impervious, and since it's only for emergency access. And he said he would gladly look at literature on this and then make a determination from there. But that's what we would be proposing to do, would be a grass paver to provide access fully around the property where there's no parking or access drives currently proposed. So that's.
Let me jump in. I agree that any man-made slopes do not require variance, so I advise them that 3 of the variances go away. I agree that the biggest issue is this access. If you accommodate and do whatever the fire marshal wants you to do, does that create an encroachment into the wetlands or wetland margin?
So there's going to be an encroachment in the wetlands margin, but I believe your max allowable is 20% that you're allowed to encroach within the wetlands.
So you won't
margin.
need a, I guess, let me ask it differently. Do you need a variance?
No, we would be at that 20%
Okay.
threshold.
Okay. That's all I.
When is the zoning hearing board matter scheduled? Do you know?
It's for the 21st, and we did have some issues getting it scheduled because TJ had some other things that kept moving around. So we'd like to keep with the April 21st date, hoping that if this board were to accept a condition that we are proposing, that we would satisfy the fire marshal with the circulation around the building, we could move forward without opposition.
So I think the question is whether the board would be comfortable saying that we're not going to oppose the application if the circulation around the building is satisfactory to the fire marshal and to your township engineer. If it isn't satisfactory, then we'll be in opposition.
Board.
I think if they can meet the fire marshal's concern, I think that's the key thing. I think the height is something we can work. It is an industrial park. We can definitely work with height in industrial park. There's nothing near there.
Yeah, the height, you'll see that more and more.
Because the matter in which warehousing is done these days, they need a higher ceiling.
So that's-
Is there anything else in the area that's at that height yet?
Yeah,
The Napton building on 309, at Sterling and 309, built in Hatfield, that's 42. They came in, I'm the solicitor for Hatfield, so they came in for all of those buildings to have a height of 42. And any new construction we're doing in industrial parks is 42 for the racking that they need now in modern buildings. That's why it's hard to renovate these older industrial buildings at their existing height at 30-some feet. So,
I think this is the first one you've seen at this
For us.
for you.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, where it's located, it's not, the height isn't a concern for me. It's tucked in,
Hidden in the back to begin with.
so.
Yeah.
Staff?
To the extent that Craig and Fire Marshal are satisfied, I agree that we shouldn't oppose it.
Mary Beth?
I guess to that extent, no, you're asking to have fewer parking spaces.
yes, your code caught up and requires more spaces than what we need.
Yeah, so you require, your code requires 1 space per 500, and we're currently proposing 1 space per 1,700, a little over 1,700 square feet.
What's going to be done in the building?
We don't have a tenant at this point.
But most likely automated. Is that correct? That's the
Yeah, and
assumption.
Usually, once we get through zoning, we'll start marketing for that. But until we get through the zoning, they really don't have a tenant like that.
Do we anticipate some type of warehousing?
Yeah,
But your inclination is right, more machinery, less people.
no, that's why we have the Tiva building, you know, they've got how many parking spots and there's usually 5 cars there.
And the
So,
one next to 180, we noticed that too as well.
I would push more for, your ordinances allow for reserve parking.
Reserve park.
yeah,
We've talked about this. It's just with the grade drop off, in fact, I'm noticing as they get further along, retaining walls popping up that weren't there before, I think at the sketch plan level. It's very difficult in the back of the site. So even if we pushed them that way, I said that, I know it's gonna be difficult and the way they're going with the layout of this, it's gonna be a specific user that probably is very limited in parking, which.
I'm not pushing more.
Oh, okay.
No, we don't.
Yeah.
No, you
I
have,
was
you
thinking
want.
I was thinking my impervious speech on top of it, I will stop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Because I was generating more. impervious.
the other thing is if they have parking problems, they're gonna bear the burden.
Mhm.
So I really comes down to circulation, one variance.
so Mary Beth, you okay?
I'm okay with that idea.
Yeah, All
I'm
right.
okay with that. I'm going to ask an interesting question.
go ahead.
Since it's a new building, is there any way or is there anything in our ordinances that we could ask for some maybe green space on top of the building instead of being a flat black? Something to help with environmental? I don't know, just something.
So I'll just say that my name's Andy Miller. I'm with Catalyst Commercial and we're working to develop this on a spec basis. We're looking at what to do with some warehouse space where we run into sites that don't have good perk rates, where we can't infiltrate, where stormwater is cumbersome to meet the regs, while trying to maximize our yield on the site as well, to make our numbers work. So that is something that we're currently looking at, but I can't make any promises for this facility. But it is something we're definitely looking into. Unfortunately, the financials of doing green roofs have not met their match with being able to do stormwater underground or other things on site. So I would think in the next, near future, when it comes to different stormwater updates and different EPA mandates, that you'll see that more and more. Right now, we're just having trouble, if it was a cost savings or even a net thing, we would do it because it would be cool. But it's just not quite
There yet. Is there any way you can design it that the building could support it maybe in the future if the net earnings at net cost comes down?
We could look into it, but that becomes cost prohibitive if you're
Yeah.
gonna design for stormwater, but yet you can do it underground. So it's.
Okay.
It's an interesting concept, we could look into having an ordinance, not affecting you guys necessarily, but where they get a credit if they do a green roof. They get impervious credit, they get stormwater relief somehow,
Because if we're
it's
starting to see
something-
more buildings like this, that might be a thing that we
We
could
could,
start.
we could have our professionals look into that kind of stuff.
Handball, it's up to you now.
All right, so staff, do you have any other questions or any comments? Mr.
I keep seeing this issue pop up about the parking. This is herein lies one of the challenges with zoning and land use regulations. And that we feel like we can never get ahead. We can never get to the point where we're responsive to the market. And so I say this for a philosophical nugget. What can we do as a board and professional staff to start looking at these things to make it more advantageous, more flexible? So we're not spending money on variances for parking when we know it's going to be automated. We're all going to say, yep, that's right. If we can be more creative in such a way that allows this sort of use, that it would help from an outward facing. The private sector would be able to attract more clients. It would enable us from a professional staff, alleviate our review time. But yep, oh, this is a part of this more automated system. I don't know how we would craft this, but just throwing it out there as an encouragement that we need to continue to think about how we continue to update and adapt to current best practices.
I think that's where we come into the reserve parking idea. I mean, this particular lot doesn't have that extra open space or open space.
Well, it's because they made the building so big.
I didn't say that. All I'm saying is in other situations, we have actually said, show on the plan where your reserve parking would be, so it would meet our criteria. Don't have to build it, just show us where it would go. So I think we've sort of covered that, Matt. So
You
in
can
this
al-
particular
I'm sorry, go
situation, we
ahead.
haven't.
You can also develop your zoning ordinance to say, here's the parking. But with concurrence of your board of supervisors with the right application, the board can reduce the parking for a particular use so that you have some discretion going forward. You're not sending all these applications to the zoning hearing board, but you actually manage it yourselves as far as parking spaces, more green space, less blacktop and that sort of thing.
Yeah, it wasn't so much the current process in the reserve parking as it is how can we adapt to the continued modernization of warehousing. And that's a difficult thing that we haven't been able to get ahead of. It, logically it means fewer cars. And if we're talking about fewer cars, more automation, how can we create legislation, and ordinance that makes it a lot more adaptive to the private sector?
Because to be honest, I mean, how many, I'm just asking the question. I know you don't have a tenant yet, but realistically, how many parking spots do you really need for this building?
They don't know.
53.
I'm throwing a softball at you here.
But that's really the balance. It has to be marketable to all kinds of tenants. And in
Right.
order to cast a wide net, we have to provide enough parking for it to be attractive for people to be interested. So at this size building, I mean, that's what these guys do. They tell
Right.
us,
But what I'm curious about is if we have a concern with impervious on this site, if they get a,
I didn't say that, by the way, just correct. There's not a problem with it.
no, I know,
If
but
they add more,
if they get a tenant that only needs 20 spots, why are we building 53?
I think that's where Bill's at. And like,
So
if
maybe
they-
some of this parking they're showing goes into reserve.
Well, we can deal with that in land development. And we
Right.
can also key that to who the tenant is.
right. Maybe by then we'll know who it is and be able to have that conversation with you.
Because I don't like the fact that Is it Teva or Teva? I always get it confused.
Teva.
One's a
Teva.
sandal,
Teva.
one's
Teva.
the. You know,
To be honest with
all
you,
that-
this is the first, sorry, this is the first application you have where that's a massive building. I told them at staff meeting. They're building the parking to try to, in that sweet spot that he knows better than I do. But other applicants come in and show it per the ordinance or show it, as Mr. Jones said, about here's a reserve. Or, but they're choosing to go to zoning hearing board. They may not get it. And I guarantee you then that building's gonna get smaller. Because if they don't get the variances, they can't build. They need the parking. So it isn't a done deal just because we're looking at it. We're looking at to make a decision, do you want to oppose it or not? That's really why this application's here. We can talk about all the other stuff, but if they don't get the variance, they're not building that size of building.
Right, well, I mean, we haven't even talked about, I mean,
And
we've
you don't
already,
see specs come in.
we've already said we're okay with it, but we haven't talked about the fact that it is a ginormous building.
And I made that, I told them that, I'm up front and.
We should have left 10 minutes ago.
Yeah. But I'm saying, you guys are like, the ordinances do allow
We're
for
not saying we're
reserve
okay with
parking.
it, we're saying we're not going.
Oppose it, right.
We'll be back for land development,
Right.
so you'll see this.
So your ordinance already has some, we don't know, I mean, we have one application, the same owner going one way versus the other. I want to build more, so what am
Yeah.
and to be honest with you, until they mentioned what they were doing, it's hard for me to give guidance, and someone else could come in and say, I like the building, I need more parking, and they're gonna be right back in front of me,
We'd have to go back.
and they're gonna come back, so.
Right.
Well, the old 180 was built under the code where you didn't have enough parking, and now we have too much parking in the code. But you're right, where's that spot?
Mhm.
You know, that's why you have staff, so your codes evolve. You know, restaurant, we just used to have one calculation for restaurant, but now we have fast food, we have takeout, we have smoothie shops, and then we have people who dine for 2 hours. I mean, it depends on the
Mhm.
use, and things evolve.
Well, I think we should let them, go. Well, actually, is there any other staff comment? Is there any public comment?
Zoom?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. All right, so before we get any deeper, I think we'll let you go.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate your time, and thanks for adjusting for us. We appreciate it.
Yep. All right, as soon as they are able to clear out, if 84 Schoolhouse Road, would please step to the front desk and introduce yourselves.
Lady different.
Slightly different, based on.
I already have two of them in front of me, which, we have another one?
The one that's marked PC, Greg, was the one that
Oh,
was
okay.
presented at PC, and then there was a
Oh, so
updated
this-
one from last week.
Yep.
That we put out for everybody.
Okay.
Well.
You all right? I don't think anybody saw that on camera because the camera faces this way.
But you just called it out.
Mostly we're here on a sketch plan, so we're not asking for anything, we're asking for feedback only. My name is Rob Cunningham, I'm with Holmes Cunningham Engineering. I'm here with Tony Maris, who's with 84 Schoolhouse LP. We are here to discuss 84 Schoolhouse. It is a 9.1 acre property. It is directly across the street from Boulder Drive. Our neighbor to the north is Buyer's Choice. And I've driven Meadow Road and that housing development is to the south. There's Britton Woods open space is to the west, and Schoolhouse Road is to the east. So we're presenting a 5-lot subdivision. It is 1 acre lot zoning. It's intended to be a by right plan. No zoning relief would be needed to construct this. We have presented this to the Planning Commission in the beginning of March. They provided some feedback. It's 5 lots on a single cul-de-sac road. That's the way it was presented to the Planning Commission. The feedback we got from the Planning Commission was less of a formal road for 5 lots. It may not be warranted to do a full road with full cul-de-sac. Might be a lot of impervious coverage that's really unnecessary. Plan I handed out this evening is the modification based off of some of the comments from Gilmore in their letter, kind of realigning the driveway, things like that. But also shows a 20-foot shared driveway with a fire truck turnaround at the back, instead of a formal cul-de-sac. We submitted the plan to staff, mainly to get the fire marshal's buy-in on what is an acceptable shared driveway for firefight access. We presented him with 20 feet and he said 20 feet is acceptable. So the plan we're here to discuss tonight is this 5-lot subdivision on Schoolhouse Road with a shared driveway, no curbing, no sidewalk, kind of more informal in its presentation. These will be 5 custom single-family homes. And our intention was to make it more of a estate feel community than your typical, subdivision in the cluster subdivision. A couple of the things that were brought up at the planning commission meeting, in lieu of putting a sidewalk along Schoolhouse Road, our intention is to construct a 6-foot wide asphalt path to match or mimic what was done on Colebrook, kind of extend that piece. I know that Buyer's Choice has been talking about developing the back of their property. We would have discussions with that property owner or that developer a bit about making a continuous trail connection, obviously from Colebrook through that Buyer's Choice piece across our frontage. I think the planning commission thought that continuing the trail, since there's no formal sidewalk on this side of the street, was the right choice. The other things that were discussed was how to deal with Schoolhouse Road. I know that people have a lot of strong opinions on what goes on Schoolhouse Road. People drive at a pretty good clip. Would we do roadway improvements? Would we curb it? Would we leave it? I think that's some of the mitigations to the existing concerns are things that we can discuss during land development. From our perspective, our impact is minimal. It's 5 single-family lots. So based on the existing traffic that would be on Schoolhouse Road, we're not a major contributor. But we understand, there are some concerns. The ordinance requires a pretty hefty widening, curbing sidewalk situation. That's the way the ordinance reads. If you're familiar with this section of Schoolhouse, this is when you're heading north. This is the first part of the S curve. Boulder Drive has probably a pretty tough time with visibility. We're on the other side of the curve. We actually can see well in both directions. So it's not a sight distance thing on our end. We had talked about internally as a team, what's the best solution from a safety standpoint. I know this is something that we'll have to work with Craig, but our concern was if we did a lot of widening on our side, you'd have a situation where people are trying to pass, people are trying to make left turns, people won't be able to get a Boulder Drive, things like that, while people are turning into Boulder Drive. So we just don't want to make sure we open Pandora's box by just, hey, we're going to install the improvement. So we think we're going to need a waiver to come up with a solution. Obviously, that's an engineering item, but I just wanted to bring it up. It's something we're thinking about. We understand it's a concern of the township. So, it's something that we will kind of go through in the process.
What widening do you show now? Any?
We don't show anything. Planning commission thought it would be best to keep it as a edge of pavement. There's a little bit of a grass swale. Some of the drainage runs along or off the road. We had pushed the trail about 12 feet off of the road, so it kind of gives a little bit of separation. One of the things that the planning commission did like was how the trail is separated from Schoolhouse Road along Colebrook by the vegetation, and there's a berm. Came to our attention that Craig had that buffer installed and Colebrook decided to keep it and run the trail behind some of that vegetation, but, you know, we think that could be a good solution too.
So you're willing to put, I think we talked about like a landscape berm or something.
Something like that,
Between
yeah.
the edge of shoulder, the road and the trail. Instead of doing curbs and your formal sidewalk, road widening. So this is the more rural characteristic design that matches the layout as well.
Unfortunately, that's not really a rural area. And my concern is you're building single family homes. We're going to have children who are going to be walking out to some sort of bus stop because it doesn't look like there's much room in there for a bus to go in.
Typically buses don't go into smaller developments. So they always stop on the road. Now, I do understand your point. Again, this is all for discussion. If we have to curb some of the radius for that solution, I think that makes sense.
Well, they don't even go into Colebrook at the moment. The buses just stop right on
They park
Schoolhouse.
Right on
And that
Schoolhouse.
was part of our concern with widening schoolhouses. If someone's now slowing down to pull over, tuck in, now someone's gonna wanna run around them.
I would not,
Yeah,
because I live at Circle Drive and they pass me as I'm turning and it's a straight shot. So I would not consider widening Schoolhouse.
Let me jump a little bit. 'Cause
Yeah.
I want to back up a little bit. So they
Rewind.
have a by right plan that they're willing to do. It might be a minor change to the cul-de-sac layout, but this is curbs, sidewalks. I don't know if it's in your packets or you look at
Yeah,
it.
it's
we
all
got it.
marked.
Or it's all,
PC.
yeah, so.
They have the PC.
So they're willing to do that. The only issue on that, which is this on either plan, is what type of widening for Schoolhouse. So let's push that aside. So this was your cookie cutter curb sidewalk, 28-foot road for 5 homes. Planning Commission wanted to go with a more rural layout, even though it's not in the rural section. They do that above Lake Galena. They decided they wanted to go this way. I recommend they come in and get your feedback before they go engineer it, because they would have gone and engineered this other one. And until I think there's unanimous, they're gonna probably follow the ordinance and just go, okay, we'll do that. So the other plant they just handed out is your more rural. I think they want to go down to 16. Did they mention 16?
They mentioned 16.
We were the whole way down to 16 feet at Planning Commission. I said, you gotta get the fire marshal.
16 foot of what?
Yes.
The
Road?
width of the
The width
road,
of the
it's
road.
it's gonna be a driveway at that point.
Yeah.
Two-way driveway. So the fire marshal said 20. And then also they didn't want to reduce the cul-de-sac bulb because that's more impervious. I said, work that out with the fire marshal. And they've done everything I've asked. So I will commend them. This new plan is exactly what I think I envisioned Planning Commission.
Yes. They
But
have curbs.
they need feedback from you which way to go.
I have safety concerns.
And that's
And that's my major concern.
So
I understand the lack of curbs in the development. I assume you're doing no curbing in the development either.
That is correct.
Well, so hold on one second, just
Sure.
real quick before you go too far with that. So Colebrook has curbs,
Yes,
Boulder does not,
no.
and they're a large development. She has curbs. So we don't have a consistency in that area
Right.
internally on a development.
So, but Boulder, we don't own those roads. They,
Well, we're not
You
gonna
own
these
Boulder?
either.
no, but I'm saying that's why they must, we don't
That was a
have
condition.
curbs.
That
We
was,
own Boulder.
if we own it, you're.
Oh, we own Boulder?
Boulder
Oh,
is
yeah,
township
we do
road,
own Boulder.
But
Do
the
we
rest,
own
the
the
internal
loopings?
roads are not. right.
But Boulder doesn't have curbs.
I'm not pushing for more
West-
impervious
West Boulder is
or
Boulder.
sidewalks.
It's two Boulders.
I do
Colebrook is Boulder.
do have, my major concern is safety. If you're gonna have a development there, you're gonna have kids crossing, God help us, Schoolhouse,
Mhm.
or trying to, going back between the neighborhoods. So this trail goes behind the berm, and then where does it end? It would end at the edge of the property?
Ours, well, we
Chris, it's
had
all-
discussed we discussed with staff, meeting with the buyer's choice folks to see if we could, because they're gonna need to dedicate right away if they ever develop that property. They may have already done it, so we may have the opportunity to connect to the Colebrook Trail.
I'm talking about going the other way towards Butler.
Oh, it was just-
No, stop.
No, there's
But
nowhere to, yeah,
Yeah.
you have to cross.
part of waiving the full road improvements, they're willing to try to connect the trail going the other way. That was, if we're gonna require curb sidewalks and by the book, then I don't think they're gonna spend the effort to go. We can't require it unless they wanna, offer that up, but that was in exchange for reducing the road widening and the curbs, providing curbs along Schoolhouse. So again, that, and you could always do curb and formal, a trail or sidewalks there. You can do something else internally. Typically, if you have curbs along Schoolhouse, I'm gonna take it in and just match it up and provide formal sidewalk. So.
Well, see, Colebrook doesn't have curbs on Schoolhouse. Nobody has curbs on Schoolhouse on that side of the property. And if you were going to do that trail doesn't come out from Colebrook towards the buyer's choice. It ends at the street. So you'd have to go all the way in front of buyer's choice and through Colebrook.
Yeah, and there's only a small section on the Colebrook property, and that's within the right of way. So I think there's no issue with making the physical connection to the curb ramp. And the buyer's choice probably hasn't ever dedicated the right of way, so it's just coming to them and making them aware. And to Mr. Gabe's point about we're just ending at our property line, I think that maybe that was the reason why Colebrook just ends. Nobody wanted people to just keep going to a dead end, but our thought is, and you know, this is a township decision. These properties, the rest of the properties on Schoolhouse Road are already developed. There's already single family homes, but if there's ever the opportunity to take access all the way up, you know, we think that providing our section of trail is, you know, the next step. And, you know, obviously giving everybody the opportunity to come off of Butler at some point in the future is beneficial.
Butler has sidewalks on the opposite side from your property. It's all the way from Butler, all the way down to the park, is all on the other side of the road. The only place that there is a trail is in front of Colebrook.
Well, see, when we were designing this is, you know, you were here for Colebrook. When we designed Colebrook, the idea is that anyone that is on this side of Schoolhouse,
Which side?
the Colebrook side, which is also the side they're on,
I'm just asking which.
would if they come in, sidewalks would lead them down through the Colebrook pathway to the safe crossing, quote unquote, safe crossing at Cedar Hill and Schoolhouse. That was the intent. Well, it's a clear site intersection.
Yeah.
So if they could, I prefer the Colebrook meandering path, you know, behind the road personally. But I do think that if they're asking for waivers of curbing along the entire frontage, that, you know, they should look into getting the right of way to connect all the way down to Colebrook's sidewalks.
We're certainly willing to try to do that. I mean,
Yeah.
if Fire's choice says no, then we'll have to talk about it. But
Let me know if you get that answer, let me know. We're working with them on that project.
And I know that's, so I was gonna say, I know they're in with you, and so there's things that they're gonna need. It's hard to do a waiver-free plan nowadays, so I'm sure there's an accommodation that can be worked out.
They're proposing a project there, if that's what you mean.
Yeah.
That's the rumor. I don't want to speak for them.
They are.
There's
No,
a rumor.
they brought in something to
They
show
are.
us, so.
They back down, back a little bit. To me, the design of Schoolhouse is gonna be the same. That's my opinion.
As Colebrook's.
No, either plan. I still need you guys to tell them which plan to go with.
I just stated what I thought. I thought I'd be willing to, you know, waive
Internal.
curbing
Internal.
Okay.
internally, and to be honest, there is no curbing in front of Colebrook. So, you know, waiving that as well in exchange for them obtaining right away and building the sidewalk all the way down to
Paved trail.
Colebrook. Yes,
There's
paved
a
trail. Yeah.
My only question is, and I'm sort of following Mary Beth's thought, is that there's going to be kids in this development. They'll probably be getting the bus at the end of the driveway. And if you know, on rainy days, there'll be 5 cars lined up with parents waiting for the bus to come before their kids get out of the bus. So I don't know whether you're going to have enough room for in and out and have those buses or those people backed up. So just a concern.
I actually was gonna about a taper.
Yeah, like Colebrook did. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll work out some type of taper to allow.
Yeah, see how-
Right, because you know that's what'll happen.
Start a little wider and then.
75-foot taper.
They know.
Both
Children
ways.
know these days.
Oh, okay. Yep. I have a little bit of
Yeah, they
Just-
were
I
looking
wouldn't do a taper.
Yeah, we can do the paper.
Right.
just around.
Yeah, just around the corner.
Yeah.
So,
Gives a little more room.
Yeah.
for People there.
very similar to Colebrook.
Yeah.
use that as your.
And cars do park along there. to
Yes.
drop kids off at the bus.
So I'm going to ask about conservation easements. I know one side is much more woody than the other. The people who are on Meadow Road almost would be going, we've never had neighbors before that close. Is it open on lot 5 and lot 2?
Yes, and there's a good amount of dead trees, so some of that area isn't open today, but those trees
Trees don't come down.
are, most of them have actually come down.
They're ash trees, so they're being damaged by emerald ash borer.
Okay.
So we, obviously this is a sketch plan, we have to go through all the landscaping, we're gonna be required some replacement trees because we're removing trees anyway. We know that they haven't had neighbors and, like good fences make good neighbors, good buffers make good neighbors. So we know that we're gonna wanna to provide some vegetation so that everybody feels like they have their own property and we're not on top of each other. I will say that there's a 75-foot setback and the house on lot 2 is further into the property than the existing garage. So,
Okay,
it's,
yeah, that's a good
yeah,
visual.
good, yes,
Yeah.
you kind of understand.
Your ordinance requires deed restrictions for the protection of natural resources, so they're maxed out on the woodlands disturbance, so
I was just gonna ask, what's the percentage,
they're at the max.
which is,
I don't.
I can't read
20%.
that. Huh?
what?
20%.
20%.
So they will have conservation easements on the back protecting the woodlands.
Yep.
Once we figure out where the ash trees are and all that, so your zoning ordinance requires those deed restrictions be placed in the deeds and also on the plan, so I think they even made a note that if they want to do any more improvements to the lot, they need to go to the zoning hearing board. I mean, they're maxed out, right, so. But that happens in either layout.
And once again, we come up with the demarcation of the conservation easement. We need to work on that ordinance very quickly.
I told you breakfast GPS transmitters in the ground. That's, in a concrete monument. That way you can site visit easy.
Maybe a few landmines, like.
So,
Just, I won't digress.
I was.
That was a joke. That was a joke.
So
I'm
before you-
not
before you-
serious.
I'm not walking everybody's property, finding these GPS.
Before you start, Craig, so we've talked about curbs and sidewalks internally. What about width of road, cul-de-sac versus, we could still have the cul-de-sac even if we get rid of curbs and sidewalks. Which iteration of roadway internally do we like?
I don't know if you can notice it real well.
It's kind of
I look at
hard
this all day long,
Yeah.
but can you show?
because they
This
overlay
is not
the
a
cul-de-sac
cul-de-sac. So
on
this is
top of
something
that.
we don't
So
have.
drive-
It's called a hammer.
Yes, I
It's the
see.
alternative to a cul-de-sac that's in the fire code. So it allows a truck to pull up and make its K-turn to get out.
Okay.
Obviously, it was designed as in a safety manner. The purpose was we're providing the right of way that would be required into the ordinance. The left-handed cul-de-sac that Craig's letter mentions, the right of way is still 50 feet. It's just, and we're basically then providing a shared driveway that meets the fire marshal's requirements. And,
This is different. I don't believe you have anything like this.
No.
And it,
Makes a lot more sense in cul-de-sac.
some people like it, some people, I'll admit,
It's
You're
going
not
to
a fan.
look awkward. when
it
it's
will
built.
it'll look like a private drive. We're not, your township won't take dedication or anything, but it'll be, the issue is maintenance is.
There'll
you're gonna go into-
be a
They
required
already know that.
cross easements and maintenance agreement
Yeah,
recorded of record.
yeah, this is the, I think your prior manager, every time I brought up this shared driveway concept, said, yelled at me for it, but that's why we're still having a right of way. Not that 5 people are gonna come and say, hey, build me a road, but the right of way is there for zoning purposes more than anything now. So I didn't want anybody to think that looked like a cul-de-sac. It's actually only 20 foot wide, and then what's the hammerhead width? 20
it's 113 feet.
by 20 feet.
Yes, correct.
So that's just a K turn basically. But you do not have that in the township.
Yeah, with a wider, with a tape with a wider area coming into it so you can make the turn.
Now, there is another option. which I think where Greg was gonna go, if I'm gonna guess, is waiving curbs and sidewalks internally, but just doing a paved cul-de-sac with a paved road that maybe is 24 feet, something more to what you normally see, but waive the curb and sidewalks. That would be what you've seen in the past. Above Lake Galena, more rural section where it's 20 to 24 foot, and then there's just a paved cul-de-sac, but no curb. That way runoff can get into the grass, into the swales, can infiltrate. It is good for stormwater management, instead of putting them into pipes, piping it right to the.
The alternative to a gigantic 60-foot diameter cul-de-sac or 50-foot diameter cul-de-sac is doing a circle with maybe it's 16 feet circle, so the fire truck can make its turn. It's just a cul-de-sacs are great in high dense developments, right? Your Colebrook's, your townhouse developments, very small lot singles. In an estate community like this, a sea of pavement, not good for stormwater, also has a very odd feel when you have only one or two driveways on it. So we're here for feedback and we want to have a good conversation. If it's coming back and presenting something to Craig and him and staff can discuss it, we'd be open to that. Again, it would be a circle with an island or like a cul-de-sac with an island in it. So you have 40% of the pavement that you would in a gigantic cul-de-sac. This configuration, obviously, if the board is so inclined to just build me the cul-de-sac, we're gonna have to build the cul-de-sac and.
I don't have any problem with what you're presenting. I would prefer that over the island in the middle, because anytime I seem to encounter that, there's always someone parking where they shouldn't be parking and you can't get by anyway, so.
And who owns it and who maintains
Yeah,
it? They don't,
yeah.
this
Staff
makes
doesn't
it clear who
recommend
owns what, and we can deal with that a lot better.
Yeah, I think that's a good alternative to paving the whole cul-de-sac. And
So would there be a HOA to deal with looking after the road?
And the trail.
Stormwater,
And the trail.
Everything.
Yep.
out front.
One issue I see is plowing. There's gonna have to be some kind of agreement in the HOA that when this area is plowed, that hammerhead does not get piled full of snow, because the fire truck still. needs to
And
be
there's
able to
plenty
make
of
the
room, that should not be.
At the
an
one-
issue.
We can plow off of it. We can leave a snow push off area.
Yeah, they would push it off, and that's where the fire truck's supposed to be turning up.
Well, yeah, as long as you push it all the way up.
Yeah.
We can push up into towards the regular stormwater easement too.
Yeah.
And if there's
So-
no curbs, it's not curbs.
Yeah, you can
they
just push it
push
off.
Trash trucks would be able to go down there quite easily then?
Correct. Yeah, the trash truck is significantly smaller than a fire truck.
Okay.
Your normal box trucks, it's, obviously it's designed for fire safety. And that's obviously a big issue.
So UPS, Amazon, all that. stuff.
Everybody's small.
Yeah,
Everybody's
that's
small.
So it's sorry. I was just trying to move it along a little bit just with this. Is everybody all right with the hammerhead concept? Okay,
Yes.
So
You'll see
we,
this again.
yeah, so, sorry, Mary Beth, I don't mean to cut you off, but like if I think we're all right with it, so we don't need to keep asking plenty of
Okay.
details.
All right.
Is there anything else we should be discussing, Craig?
Yeah. Well, we got good feedback, so.
Board, is there any other items? No?
Thank you.
Well, hold on, was there any public comment? Okay, we're good, thank you.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Take care. Yeah, we're gonna see them again, so. Some of we're all right with the layout.
It's just an interesting concept of doing it that
It
way.
is.
So, and, there's a walking track, big cul-de-sac like that behind it as well. Whole waste of.
Upstate, of Blacktop.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you gonna make it?
It's 16.
Oh, no, I'm.
You got rid of it?
Huh? Yeah, I got rid of my responsibility. So, the next item on the agenda is 1 Highpoint Drive. Now, I do have an announcement to make as chair. At this time, I will be recusing myself from my position as supervisor to discuss or have any
You're gonna
Comments?
become a-
comments. I'm going to become a member of the public. So at this time, I will be turning over the meeting to the Vice Chair, Mr. Jones.
Welcome.
Thank you.
If you could introduce yourself as to who's going to be speaking tonight.
Board members, good evening. Kelly McGowan, representing the applicant Fox Lane Homes at Highpoint. And Scott Mill is here this evening from Landscape Engineers, who you will recall provided testimony to conditional use and has prepared and participated in preparation of the plan. Also here is Joe Morrissey, who you'll also recall from the conditional use hearing, and John Rathbon from Fox Lane Homes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Right, so we are here this evening to discuss a request for preliminary final land development approval of the redevelopment of the Highpoint site. As I just noted, you'll recall this plan from a conditional use hearing, at which time the board granted the conditional use to permit the mixed development that we're showing on this upside down plan. Thank you, Scott. So what we're showing, and the reason why we wanted to bring both of these plans for you, this is the conditional use plan, and this is the preliminary final land development plan. So what we've done in basically the engineering of the plan is to go back in, and we were able to, that plan had been engineered to such an extent that we were effectively able to maintain an identical plan with an identical layout. It's 137 units. You'll recall, I know we had much discussion of this area up here at the conditional use hearing. You'll see how that was developed. I think what you will see, and when I look at what you do see differently, and I'll pull this one up here now, is a lot more vegetation. You see the landscaping plan coming together, the tree replacement coming together, but otherwise, the mix of units is the same as we discussed before, and as the layout. A couple of other things you'll see are the fountains that were the two naturalized basins were a conditional use, a condition to that approval. So you see those, you see the fountains. You also see sidewalk extensions. Again, another one of those conditions to the conditional use approval. It's actually where I wanted to start this evening, because you've heard the presentation now on this plan, I think at least 2 or 3 times. But just to highlight for you a few of the features of the plan that we have engineered now and we have changed in response to the reviews. And I just hit on a couple of them. But the first of which was we were to install the 2 fountains in the big pond, what we're calling the big pond, in open space area F. You'll note that open space area F has always been proposed to maintain as open space. It is shown as open space. You'll see we had proposed the walking trail surrounding that space that is there. The pond is also there. And then again, as I mentioned, some of that additional planting that you can see around that pond for some taking advantage of some tree replacement and also some vegetation in that area. We were also required in your conditional use to design and construct 2 smaller stormwater basins. These were also to be naturalized. You can see the 2 basins, one is up there and then the other is at the top of the plan. They also have been now fully engineered. Another one of your conditions was to add more buffer plantings. This was a big one. So what we've done here, as you can see at the top of the plan, there is what we're calling a double buffer. There's also a berm in that location. You'll see, and we can take you through the street tree waiver that we've requested when we get to the waivers, but we're basically looking to put trees everywhere we can on the site. There is some woodland disturbance. You have a replacement, so we're either replacing them or paying for them. So there's a lot of vegetation. One of the comments at the Planning Commission meeting that I should note was a request to put some additional plantings, make sure there were enough plantings up here in this location. So you can see there's existing vegetation to remain, but we will look for some more opportunities to plant some more trees at that property line and at all of those property lines. We are showing the active recreation areas. one of the conditional use conditions was that in addition to those active recreation areas, which we have preserved, there was an additional contribution of $2,500 per dwelling unit. So that is a part of the preliminary final approval that brings the total contribution to $5,000 per dwelling unit when you consider the township standard fee. So that is an addition. I noted that already there's a paving requirement for your trails that is being shown. The other big one that I think I remember conversation about was additional off-street overflow parking that was discussed. So we were required to amend the plan to include up to 6 additional off-street parking areas. I think, Scott, if you want to point out kind of where we're showing those
One
parking
there next to
areas.
Road D, a couple along Road A, one here along Road B, and then a couple kind of pull off areas along here, and opposite that area on Road B.
The other thing that you'll notice, and again, I keep talking about trees, that you'll notice in those parking areas is they are also buffered, and they are also planted around those parking areas. So that kind of high level covers, you know, what we've done to the plan, how we've designed it, pulled it in conformance with the conditional use. We do have a list of waivers for the plan. Van Cleef Engineers issued a letter March 22nd that listed those waivers. None of these waivers are new to the extent that they could not have been anticipated when we came in with the conditional use. As I said, the plan is the same as we showed you in terms of design and layout. So each of these waivers is in order to facilitate, and actually in some places facilitate changes that we made or modifications that we made in response to some of the board's comments. So
Let me jump in. I was gonna say
please,
that.
yeah.
If you don't grant some of the waivers, the layout won't look like that.
Right.
So the waivers are kind of conditional use thing. You know, you acknowledge that waivers were needed. So many of the waivers have already been discussed several times, have been part of the conditional use, a couple of the informal sketches that you've seen. So without these waivers being granted, like cul-de-sac design,
Right, exactly.
intersection spacing, they're not new. There's widening of the existing roads. Technically, they're supposed to widen Highpoint and Horizon, and you know that wasn't part of this layout. So I think I got yelled at, but I said I have to document which waivers technically they still need to comply with the ordinance. So many of those waivers are ones that we didn't really discuss, but they were part of the overall design at conditional use hearing.
Right, so what we have, and I can probably move through them pretty quickly because I can group some of them. And as Craig said, they are really on those high level issues. The first is approval of preliminary final in one submission, which is technical waiver required your subdivision ordinance. Then there are, and I'll do them, and I'll do what I said I would do. I'll do them together. There are 1, 2, 3 that are required, 3 waivers that are required in order to facilitate that cul-de-sac up at the top of the plan. And that was, we actually, you recall, we reduced some density up in that area. We provided for the twin units. And we're also providing, I think that the key up here is an emergency access point here. So you do end up with the ability to loop in that area. You also end up with the ability to pull in and pull straight back out in an emergency situation. So that is covered by 3 waivers. We then have a technical waiver that requires nothing be placed or planted within the area of an easement. So this is, as you know, former Highpoint site. It was partially a former North Wales Water Authority site. It has the water tower, so there are multiple easements in favor of North Wales Water Authority. We have been coordinating with the authority throughout this process, and we are respecting those easements. In some areas, we're relocating those easements, but there will be actually no building. None of the physical buildings will be within an easement, but we are crossing over some of those easements in various locations. That is a waiver. What Craig just referred to, there are actually 2 waivers that involve a full mill and overlay of Horizon and Highpoint. So that wasn't discussed before. What we did discuss with Gilmore's office is that, we'll go out there, we'll review Highpoint and Horizon. I think they were recently done potentially, but the developer will work with the township to maintain the, the integrity of those roads throughout the construction process.
I mean, if there's any damages, you'll repair them, fix them to
Exactly.
our satisfaction.
Yeah. The next waiver is actually something Craig referenced, also minimum intersection spacing. This one's kind of all over the place. There's an 800-foot requirement, a 500-foot requirement. We're coming close on most of them, but that is a technical waiver. The next one is grades of local streets. You have a 3% maximum grade. We hit 4%. And I think 2 proposed intersection locations. Again, that's been reviewed by the township engineer. The next one would be curbs to be provided for all parking areas. Again, we have those smaller parking areas for stormwater management purposes. We're not proposing to fully curb them, but we are, as I said, doing a full planting around those parking areas to delineate parking areas. There is a sidewalk requirement along the property frontage. This one is only requested so we don't have a duplicative sidewalk here where we have the walking trail. So otherwise the walking trails, there are full sidewalks within the development and the walking trails will take you throughout the other locations. We're also showing the sidewalk here and again, the connection up here. But we're not going to install a sidewalk right next to the walking trail and add the impervious, where we're already providing pedestrian connectivity. The next 1, 2, 3, 4 are relating to stormwater management. One is required because of the need to create the naturalized basins. They're going to be flat bottomed. One is relating to a reinforced concrete pipe. One is relating to a maximum spillway, and one of them is relating to how the sump pump and roof drains are being treated from the new units. Again, they've all been reviewed by the township engineer. The final one is actually one that I also referenced earlier, street trees being planted every 30 feet. And I understand you may be having this issue in another development because of spacing issues with the driveways. We can't meet that 30-foot requirement. We also have a difficult time meeting the number requirement, again, because of that spacing. So again, we're looking for every opportunity to get those trees both along the streets, but also in other areas of the development. And that will cover the waiver letter. Gilmore issued a letter March 15th. It is a will comply letter. Our engineers had an opportunity to meet with Gilmore to work through a lot of the comments when the letter was issued. I think, Craig, correct me if I'm wrong, do we have a 5-foot grading
in the property
within
track boundary.
from the tract boundary, or did we work through that one? That was the only thing I couldn't remember.
As far as a waiver of that,
Yeah,
I don't recall that being discussed.
yeah. I think we must have resolved it. Yeah, okay. That was the only comment in the Gilmore letter that could have been a question, but that is a will comply letter.
Except for planning commission made note of it, unless you don't mention this. Items D1 and D2 from our review letter, March 15th, page 7. There are 2 traffic comments. They were left over from the conditional use hearing. The applicant agreed to, per the direction of the board, to focus the efforts to Upper State and Horizon. Is it Horizon? The site distance issue. I think Mr. Jones, you brought that up. So they're required up to $25,000 to do warning devices, and we're working with their professionals on that. So the other 2 intersections weren't going to be looked at, or were looked at, but we put the resources there for the conditional use approval. So items D1 and D2, as indicated, planning commission approval were stricken from our letter, and everything else is a will comply.
Right. The other comment that came out of the planning commission meeting was a request that no construction vehicles
access the site via Schoolhouse Road. That was a request, and that was in the planning commission's motion, and we would agree that that be incorporated into a board approval. I think that's at the request of a resident. Fire marshal issued a letter, reviewed the plan, all will comply comments, just noting fire hydrant, all hydrants are supplied by 8-inch mains, and a restriction, I believe we talked about this in conditional use, that parking should be permitted only on one side of the internal drives due to the road width. Bucks County Planning Commission also issued a review letter dated February 15th. Did not raise any issues outside of what we've already discussed. Noted active open space, the trail access and connectivity, and then had a comment with respect to a tree species for the landscape plan. So I would, we would welcome questions. Again, I do think this plan is not only consistent, but basically identical to the one that you've seen already and granted approval on already. And so.
I have one question. You stated that because of spacing and the tree requirement.
Sure.
Are you planning to do any kind of greenery where perhaps a tree might fit, not fit, but something else might be there, shrub or?
Yeah, they would, I'll answer for them.
Yeah.
If you want to go that route of like 1 tree equals 3 shrubs or some equivalent, we've done that in the past. I don't believe we've discussed that. I didn't offer that up because I never know, but.
I just for the aesthetics of the community. Yeah, I understand if you can't fit trees.
Yeah, because the canopy become, mature, looks great when you first plant it, and then we've had these issues in a couple of developments that.
Every development, they're planted far too close to the sidewalk and,
If you
yeah.
wanna, we did not discuss this.
I'm
but-
just I'm just
No, that's-
asking a question, if you had thought, if you're planning that, or if you're just looking solely at trees, and I don't know what anybody else here thinks. Obviously, a shrub has to be maintained, so that's another cost for the homeowners
Are you talking about the
association.
replacement trees that they're gonna pay a fee in lieu when they redo that, but, or they can plant maybe some evergreens, like two small evergreens in exchange for deciduous, or I'm more than willing to work.
Just in terms of the aesthetics, because I'm just looking at a,
You're
bird's eye
referring to
view
in front
right
of the
now.
houses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm just asking that had been thought
No,
of.
it's actually a really good comment, because the other thing that we realized too is, transformers, electric transformers, doing shrubs around that always is a win. Mailboxes, certain, kind of high profile corner lots to give a little privacy, the sides of tunnel units that have like a high profile. So we're happy to work with the township engineer to come up with a landscape plan that works and makes the neighborhood look as good as possible.
Just a thought.
That's great.
You guys, any other feedback on that issue? I haven't done that recently, but I've done it other townships, so. Or I'll work out an equivalent planning schedule with them, and that'll reduce the overall number of trees they need to replant.
Just no arborvitae's.
No.
Unless you want to attract deer.
Yeah.
Well, I do like that they have that nice shape, and then at the top they come out a little bit, Yeah,
And we do have them up in that area, so we'd just be inviting them to.
deer chow,
Yeah.
yeah.
Any other problems you have, Craig?
No, actually, what I was gonna say was planning commission recommended preliminary final on March 23rd.
Second.
22nd. And they want additional condition was about vehicle access on Schoolhouse, and all the other review letters that were already mentioned. There was no other comments raised. I've looked at this plan way too many times already, and I still need to look at it a few more times. So I think I've advised all the board members, it's the same layout, same layout, which we usually don't get. But I think we did a good job. Compliments to their side as well as our side, that we got to this point where we knew what the layout we were dealing with from early on, and it wasn't changing through the whole process. So it makes it easier on everybody. So I have no other comments or,
There is something I can see. I'm not sure.
that's it, actually, my comments. So.
Any additional supervisors' comments? Mary Beth?
We were just, I just remember we had talked about a like focal point or something in that center,
Triangle of green.
and I can't quite make out if there's something there or not.
Just open space, active
Active
open
open
space.
We did not. I think the discussion was to kind of leave it as a kind of informal play space. That's
Okay.
my recollection.
Mhm.
That there was a desire to not have something as a potential gathering space to encourage folks from other areas maybe to, like such as the pavilion or other features that would.
I think they're original.
We raised issues on a couple areas like that. I think we still need to work through a little bit. I think your one sketch showed the pavilion and then it kind of got towards, you want something, you don't want organized areas, just more informal.
It also got to taking the additional fee in lieu of active
Right.
rec facilities here to give the township the funds to use as.
Yeah.
So.
So
and it
there'll
got
be
away from
$5,000
that.
a unit instead of $2,500.
Right.
Right.
So that was in replace of those.
Is there trees sort of bordering it from there? I can see sort of green shrubs.
Yeah.
So those are trees
Around
sort of
here.
bordering it.
Or
Yeah.
shrubs,
Okay.
There's an access.
trees.
Trees.
Yeah. And this, the walking trail comes in and then it's open.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then there's some.
Yeah. I was just thinking of providing shade for some people to sit out there. That's all.
That too. Yeah.
Sure.
There we go. Yes, there we go. Yeah. Pretty, pretty.
Just for that, I should make you sit here
Oh, I see
another
the
40
green.
minutes.
Okay.
Um,
We needed some binoculars.
Now you know what I've been talking about for that.
Yes. Well, it was pretty close. It was just plain. So,
Okay.
yes.
Anything else you have, Cynthia?
No, that was it.
Stephanie?
No.
I think based on what I've heard and seen, looks really good. Is there any public comment?
The only question I have is that when we start to do the. What? My
Name and address. For the record.
Pennsylvania. When it comes time to install the berm, I'm assuming that we can be commonsensical about it and look at it on site, or is it going to be completely and utterly pre-engineered?
I think installation was planned for 2 AM.
No, in terms
Oh,
of slopes and where it's located on the property in relation to the adjoining property.
I think they would agree to work with the property owner.
Okay, just wanted to.
Subject to my approval.
Yeah, just wanted to make sure that was.
you're just a regular resident, Mr. Pitt.
Is there any public comment or is there any online comment?
No, there's not.
There's not. So what is the flavor of the board? Do we want to recommend that the solicitor engineer move forward with coming up with a resolution to give the manager and us to look at in 2 weeks?
Yes.
Yes.
I think that's what the resolution is.
Yes.
Great.
Thank you for watching.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for this final map.
Yes. This does look so.
Looks much better than the one I had here.
Yeah.
I will now turn the meeting back over to, what's your name?
To the resident.
The resident. Oh, okay, now he becomes chairman.
I've been trying to look at the plan on my phone back there. and
I keep getting access to mine.
Yeah, it keeps,
For whatever reason.
I get to page 8 and then
One
it just shuts down.
plan only. The other one was working fine.
Okay, sir, it's back to you.
I know, it's back to me. Yeah, it's 65 pages. I think it might be having a meltdown. All right, next item on the agenda is information items, departmental reports from, we'll go right to the administration.
Read.
Let's keep this as brief as possible.
I have a subdivision land development. This evening.
Well, you're gonna talk to yourself pretty soon.
Really quickly, I just wanted to get an update on township property. The Coleman property, our Public Works Superintendent is in the process of obtaining unofficial quotes from a series of demolition and reclamation contractors. I'm hoping to have those numbers for a more informed discussion in 2 weeks. Just as an FYI, that's moving forward. Keller Road Bridge, Public Works is working on trying to come up with a temporary dampening device to quiet the metal grate as traffic goes over it. We went out, I should say they went out last week and they got all the way out there and got set up, and there was an electrical issue with the welder and they weren't able to weld. So hopefully, probably this week's going to be a wash, literally, with all the rain. But as soon as the weather clears, they're going to try going out for that. The Walters Road culvert, Public Works Superintendent is working with the Township engineer and the structural engineer as part of Gilmore to finalize his plan on the reclamation of the Walters Road over the culvert. We're doing that in concert with the H&H study. Remember, we talked about Gilmore and Associates is in the process of doing that. And speaking of Public Works, we are in the process of hiring 2 additional Public Works employees, which will help us in the reconstruction of the Walters Road culvert. 300th anniversary. I know this spurred a rather lengthy discussion at the last meeting, so I'm a little gun shy with this one. And I know I've been given the evil eye this evening, keep it short, but the 300th anniversary conversation, as we discussed a couple of weeks ago, we wanted to continue this conversation this evening. So here we are. Have any of the board members had any additional thoughts, comments, direction on where you believe we should go? I've had some brainstorming ideas and I would like to propose a path forward for you to consider, for you to take and go sideways if you want and do the opposite. The idea I had, so we have this standing 300 committee, and the committee members, while I get conflicting reports of how it was formed and whether or not it's an official committee, it exists, it is there. And it's made up of members who are just waiting to be turned loose on the event. Understanding that and respecting that, my solution is to turn them loose and have them design a float for our 4th of July parade commemorating a 300th anniversary, which would then segue into some sort of exhibit at the Fall Fest, have a tent, an exhibit, whether it be whatever they want to do throughout, have a theme. And then culminating in having them come up with a commemorative item celebrating the 300th anniversary that could be on sale, kind of all together. It links in current staff needs, right, in bandwidth. It links in existing events. We're not creating a new event. I think it's doable. I think it's manageable. It would empower the committee to be involved and come up with a solution. So that's what I've been thinking about. That's a path forward. I was just wondering what the board's reaction would be to that.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, I was going to say, we do not have the money or the bandwidth to produce a big production. I think that would be a great way of doing something small on many different things and have something commemorative. Maybe something else at the Township building. If people have more commemorative items that they would like to display, have a 300th anniversary display cabinet part. And
that could be, yeah, available a year or whatever.
Yeah.
So
Agreed. As I was processing things, it's like I want to be respectful to celebrating a milestone and yet not, we heard a resident come in and complain about a bridge that's falling down, and we have significant investments that are needed. And an event, while it sounds nice, personally, I have a hard time supporting a large event when we've got other things that we need to be investing in. So I want to be respectful of that, and how can we energize a committee to do it justice and to really celebrate 300 years of amazing history. And I think it could work.
I think it's a good idea.
Okay,
Very good. I will.
you have your marching orders.
I will
Yep.
set that wheel in motion. Thank you.
Yay, we have a decision.
Oh, I'm sure it's gonna. It could do
It'll
that
be
next
back.
time.
but yeah.
Careful.
Hey,
Careful.
Ben,
You weren't here. Careful, careful, careful.
The engineer's gonna sponsor it.
You had a quorum.
I think I heard the
You
engineer
could have
say
done what
it's
you
gonna
wanted to do.
sponsor
And that's all I have.
And you have a short report for us as well?
Mr. Chairman, I can make it as short as you like.
it.
Sounds good.
I do have two items for consideration at the next board meeting. The first item is the approval of the PCCD grant. We have the award notification letter that needs to be signed by the chairman.
Which they emailed me.
Use your email, everything's on there. So we'll be looking for that to, if everybody recalls, we do have the grant for policy development and accreditation. So we already have started that process, but the grant will cover most of the costs, if not all the costs. There's no questions on that. The other item is the approval to utilize Block Communications to upfit the new Ford Interceptor hybrid SUV that we are expecting
Still don't have.
sometime this year.
You're an optimist.
There is no estimated time of this vehicle coming in. However, we do want to get the fitter started to order the
So we're not
stuff
waiting
that
for
needs to go in the
So
Yeah.
we
vehicle.
can't get the vehicle, but you're trying to make sure you get the parts to go
Yeah,
in
we're
the
gonna
vehicle.
make sure we get the other stuff. So when the vehicle does get here, we'll be ready to upfit. In talking to the dealership that we're dealing with, he does have gas models on the lot. I know we presented it as a hybrid vehicle, and I think that is the way we'd like to go. But if the board would, would like to say we want the vehicle sooner than later, we do have the option going with the gas vehicle. Right now, our police fleet is aging, and we're in the process of having discussions during our capital planning meetings on the replacement plan for vehicles. I don't feel that we need to rush it. I think we can wait out to see when the hybrid vehicle is going to come. If we get towards the end of the year, I may have to advise otherwise.
Do we actually have somewhere to charge it?
And so it's not an electric vehicle, it's a hybrid vehicle. So basically what it does is when it sits and idles, the engine shuts down,
Oh, okay.
but it keeps everything inside the vehicle running, which is vital to our operations because of
Yeah.
computers and everything else that's in the vehicle.
But if you have everything inside the car running, it doesn't idle. It keeps on running because it needs that much power. Just keep it running.
Actually, they're pretty good at shutting down. They'll start back up as they feel they need to. So they do save gas.
I would like to try and stay with the hybrid.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, if we don't have patrols going out because we don't have vehicles, that's a different story.
We're not critical right now. We do, like I said, we're doing well with our maintenance right now. But a couple of the vehicles are questionable.
I might not be willing to wait till the end of the year, but maybe middle of the year, maybe to get the sense of whether or not it's coming. I just don't want to be in that position from a budget standpoint and getting too close to the end of the year, but it's something the chief and I can keep our eye on, make a recommendation. So given that the equipment exceeds the threshold for chief and I to sign off on that, it needs board authorization. It's why it'll be in front of the board in 2 weeks.
You may find the equipment for the new vehicle may not be here until the middle of the summer or fall anyway. So even if you want the vehicle, you still won't be able to outfit it. So
Yeah, and talking with Block Communications representative there, the owner, he's got a pretty good supply chain. With the stuff he deals with, he can get it in bulk and he has warehouse space to store it.
okay.
There's one or two items that we're requesting that he may not have, which he needs a couple months lead time.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, sir. Okay, no public works representatives here. Very good. Solicitor's report.
Keeping with the,
I'm sorry. That was kind of a joke. Because Matt's eyes went big, like, wait, I have something.
if you have something, then I'll keep quiet.
Well, it was just, again, another update of Public Works and that we're continuing to move through the hiring process. We met today and we're looking to start the complete interviews for the 2 crew members early next week.
All right, very good.
Understanding the direction, I will not comment on my report except to say we were discussing Mortimer in the back room in a few moments, and Matt West and I have concluded our preparation of the Gilmore documents.
Good. Fantastic.
You have my engineer's report. This is the first time you're seeing this written document. I will entertain any questions, including format or information. I have prepared this years ago, more than a couple of years ago. So there's building permit information on there, subdivision land development, and then general township projects. But I'll entertain any questions on my report.
I had a question. Oh, sorry. So let's,
No.
I'll let anybody else go if they want to.
No.
So I wasn't quite sure. So we usually get a report from Randy about building permits that have been applied for and occupancy stuff and the whatnot that comes through. So I don't know if the rest of the board feels like we need to double up on that. I'm not quite sure it needs to necessarily be part of Craig's report. Thank you for preparing. I should start by saying, thank you for preparing the report before I start to criticize it. The only other question I had was in terms of when we're getting to the, when we're in the middle of a subdivision land development project, and before it goes into the maintenance period, like you're checking off items, if there's any big ticket items that we need to know about, if that should be something that should be integrated or not.
Like a construction.
Yeah.
What I could do is separate the subdivision land development projects into projects that are in the planning process, whether sketch plan through board, and then I can have Janine will separate out the active construction projects, and then you see at the very end, you have the projects that are in maintenance. I'll replace the building permit section with a description of what's going on in the construction world. You've approved escrow release number 1, things like that. So if you like that.
Does anybody else have any?
Thank you for putting it together.
Yeah.
Yes, and thank you too. I forgot to thank you. My bad.
Well, I don't know what happened to your son at the eye doctor, though. Is he still there?
No, hockey.
Hockey.
Here's a hockey. I had my wife pick him up.
He's still waiting.
I sent her a text. I said, please go get him. All right, board comments.
I have a few.
Oh.
Sorry.
Didn't you get the memo?
They'll be quick. Firstly, congratulations to Shell, Kim. I wrote it all down because I had to think about it. Public Works, everybody from staff who worked on the Easter egg hunt from Saturday. It was a wonderful event.
Well-oiled machine for sure.
Yep. Shell did come out with a little report today. We do need to debrief a little bit concerning flow of traffic and stuff, making sure that it was softball did not black out their dates. So we had softball people turning up when they should not have been. And so
that corrective letter went out this
Yes.
afternoon.
yeah, Charlotte had said that she had fixed it. So, well, had confirmed for future blackout dates. And then parking. I think we need to talk about how we would do that, because we literally, if this was a light year, parking was an issue. If we start up again next year and it's a much more involved event, parking will be an issue the way we had sorted it. So I think a debrief, I'm assuming there'll be a debrief meeting. Yes, maybe, no?
Yeah, and there's we're trying to get into this habit of meeting internally to talk about logistics of things with events, especially from the police standpoint, traffic flow standpoint, safety and security. This one slipped through the cracks.
Yep. So, but otherwise it was great. Everybody was happy. Smiles, sharing candy, it was wonderful. So my second point was at the end of this month, we all get to go to PSATs. I think as a team, we should do a small report to say what kind of classes we went to, what interesting ideas we came back with. I know there was a lot of information gets thrown at you at that point, and it's hard to digest and to see how it will apply to our own municipality. But I think we should think about it. Something I went to in 2018, I got to give to Matt last week, about reorganizing our newsletters. So there is great information, we just need to apply it. So, and then my third thing, sorry, Greg. I go to the Doylestown Bike and Hike Committee. They are looking at trying to expand their map about how bike and hike trails, they all flow through different municipalities, and they're just trying to gather those maps. And I was talking to Craig about it just to see if we have one. I know we're trying to gather that information about working forward on our bike and hike trails and stuff. So I'm just going to say that it'll be a great thing, because then we can see how you can go from New Britain Township all the way through Chalfont, New Britain Borough, Doylestown Township to the other side. So, and even through Warrington and stuff. So
We used to have a trail map.
it's 2005.
I was gonna say, we used to have a trail map.
I think it's a little old. So yes, but we don't have anything that's like,
That's the answer I gave her.
Current.
yeah.
It's old.
Yeah, well, it's actually the tri-municipal one. So it's a planned one from the three of us. So, yeah. So just working on that. So that's it.
I just have a comment. I'm going to be working on doing a vision board, whatever the heck that is. I haven't Googled that yet. I'm teasing.
She's teasing me because I told her that if she wanted to present something, come up with your vision board and then present it to us.
I didn't go to film school. So anyway, about restarting our defunct open space or land preservation committee, whatever it is. And of course, my first start will be looking at what we did do, and then having conversations with certain people who have expressed interest in restarting it, being on it, et cetera, to see what they think it should be or could be, gathering those ideas, and then trying to have a discussion about what we can do, should do, might do. But I think, as we saw with Mr. Jones' presentations here, I think we can and should begin to develop a system of volunteers to do some things, to take some of it off the township. I'm not talking about digging trenches or paving roads. I'm just talking about putting ideas together and maybe actually going out and putting feet on the ground to see what's going on out there. Just what I'm going to be up to.
Another map that needs to be updated.
No bandwidth allowed, so.
Is there any other supervisor comments?
No.
Bill?
I'll hold mine.
You will hold yours. Okay, he's saving it for next meeting.
That's right.
All right, is there any public comment? Oh, darn it, committee reports, Park and
Wait,
Rec.
hang on a minute. We got one more. No. Park and Rec report was forwarded to the board last week. The only thing I wanted to add was that the dugout roofs have been completed. And if we had technology in this room like I wish we had, there is a slide board that I will forward to the board, to the slide board, to the board. That, yes, there it is.
Slide it out.
Vision board, I'm like. Michelle Clancy put together a nice little slide deck of the project. So I will forward that to the board, showing before, after, as well as the problem and how much money we save by doing the business.
Very cool.
That's it.
Thank you. No public comment? Is there any announcement from the staff?
I don't think so.
Do we have anything coming up?
We do have drug take back day coming back
Okay,
up on April 30th, so we'll have that here and that giant from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Saturday, April 30th.
okay. And then what do we have?
We have a couple other things. We have upcoming, we have Veterans Committee's fundraiser for Designer Bag Bingo on April 22nd. Tickets are for sale. We're already countering sponsors. We bought some of the initial bags and we're working on the prizes and things for that event. We have some volunteers, which we used to have in the past, coming to work the night of the event. We will be, one of the only requirements is that we feed them, so we will be making sure they have a meal while they're there. The other event we have coming up in May, on May 7th, it's a Saturday from 9 to 1. We have our annual shredding and e-recycling event that we do with the boroughs. I'm currently waiting on an invoice from that entity. Usually we split the cost with the neighboring boroughs with us for that event, and I will take care of getting that out.
Very cool. All right, thank you very much. Is there anything else? Sensing none, before we adjourn, I will make the following announcement. The next meeting of the Board of Supervisors of New Britain Township will take place on Monday, April 18th, 2022 at 7 p.m. here in the Township Building. The agenda and meeting materials will be posted on the website, the Township's website, prior to the meeting date at newbritontownship.org. A recording of this meeting will be available on the Township's YouTube page within the next 24 to 36 hours. After all that, I do also want to make the announcement again that we are going to the executive session following the conclusion of this meeting to discuss litigation and land acquisition. On that note, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
For a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Thank you very much.
Hit the button.